Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion, Stories of Exile and Resilience, the Power of Storytelling. We are going to discuss today the impact of storytelling in capturing the journeys of Palestinian people who have experienced exile. We are hosting this discussion as part of the Ananke's Women in Literature Festival, which is an event dedicated to mobilizing change through cross-cultural dialogue and also promoting gender equality and social justice. So my name is Alia Chebbab. I'm the co-founder of Nadja, a digital platform we launched to report on women from around the world and ensure that they are all fairly represented in the media. And with me today, we have Deema Alami and Nimati Emam. So welcome, ladies. And just a quick introduction to our guest today. So Deema is an educator, reading advocate, and children's book author. She is the co-author of 2 best-selling children's books, including one of the first books on body safety in Arabic. And she has recently curated and published 48 Stories of Exile from Palestine, which is a collection to honor the stories of Palestinian people who have endured forced exile. And we also have Nimati. Nimati is the founder of Jalila, which is a community for Arab women aimed at informing, challenging, and inspiring them to reach their full potential. Nimati is a communication expert with more than 20 years of experience in marketing and brand building. And she's also a writer and has contributed to the book 48 Stories of Exile from Palestine. So thank you very much, Deema and Nimati, for being with us today. And I would like to start with Deema. And, in the book 48 Stories of Exile from Palestine, you focus on the lived experience of Palestinians since the Nakba in 1948, which is, the mass displacement of Palestinians during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. So I wanted to ask you first, what compelled you to create this collection of stories, and what message do you hope to convey to your readers?
Okay, thank you so much for having me, Alia, first of all. Well, the biggest thing is obviously what is happening currently in Palestine, both in the occupied part and in Gaza. It was shocking to me as a human being, first and foremost, but also as a descendant of Palestinians. My paternal grandparents are Palestinian and they were exiled. I had a lot of emotions, and those emotions were primarily negative emotions. I felt despair, I felt sad, I felt upset, I felt disappointed, I felt hurt. And all of these emotions, unfortunately, were stopping me from being able to be productive, from being able to do anything with every talent that I was blessed with. But on one of those, I believe it was back in September, I saw a video of an very old lady in one of the hospitals in Gaza, and she was injured. She had a bruise on her forehead, and she was evacuated from her home because there was bombing next to her. And this old lady with white hair, dressed up in a beautiful Palestinian attire, was full of love, actually, and full of laughs. And she was actually teasing and flirting with the young reporter with her in the hospital. And 2 things stood out to me in that moment. Number one was how much love this person had in her heart, just like most of our grandparents, despite everything they've been through, she was full of love. And the second thing that stood out to me was the fact that she was very old and she looked very old. And this lady, Haji Hadia, she had 2 things with her. She had an identification card and she had a picture of her home, her current home in Hayy Shuja'iyya in Gaza. And the identification card said that she was born in Tul Karam, a city in Palestine, in 1944. And this is where a conversation took place between her and the reporter saying, "Oh my God, you were born before Nakba, you were here." And she started saying, "Yes, we'll always be here no matter what they do to us, I'm going to be here." So in that moment, I decided to take Hajja Hadia, just like every grandma, Palestinian grandma, as a role model and use her love. She had love for her land, love for her people. She was able to smile, to laugh, despite being exiled and forcefully displaced from her home twice. And I'm like, I'm going to use what I love to serve humanity. So what I love is storytelling. And this is where I decided to write a book about Palestine. And the second part was when I realized how old she was. And unfortunately, most of the people who were born pre-Nakba 1948 are quite old. And if no one preserves their stories and write them, their stories are going to die with them. And this is how the story, or the book 48 Stories of Exile from Palestine, came to be. And this is where the idea started. Unfortunately, Hajja Hadia was assassinated right in front of her home while drinking tea. So we decided to dedicate the book to Hajja Hadia, as you know, to keep her memory alive.
Thank you very much. And you decided to write the book in English.
Correct. We decided to write the book in English because, as Nimati, I'm sure Nimati will have some space to speak about that. But we grew up with these exile stories. Like, it's nothing new to us. It was, you know, we're born. I cannot think of a single moment where, oh, my dad sat me down and spoke to me about our exile story. We grow into it. It's part of us. You know, I have goosebumps now saying this because it's so ingrained in us. And we know this inside out. My goal, I always write in Arabic. I love the Arabic language. I'm proud of the Arabic language. And I write children's books in Arabic. But for me, I sat with myself and I'm like, what's the purpose of this book? The purpose of this book is to bring the English-speaking community closer to our truth, to hear our stories from our mouths, not from someone else, not from someone who studied about the Palestinian diaspora or the Palestinian exile, not a historian. I want to tell you stories about people just like you and me, you know, who I always say they have love stories, they have ambitions, they failed, they succeeded, they have hobbies. These are the people just like you and me, and it's pure luck that they were born in Palestine and you weren't. And this is what they went through. So the whole idea is to get the English-speaking community to feel, to understand, to hear our stories.
Okay, that's amazing. And also, so the book was created with almost 60 volunteers.
Correct.
Can you tell us more about, you know, this collaboration?
So for me, I always refer to this book as a community project. Yes, I led it. Yes, I came up with the idea and I was leading the efforts, but it would not have been possible with, again, people like Nimati, the contributing authors. We had over 45 contributing authors because we had 3 who wrote about both their paternal and maternal grandparents. But we also had over 13 illustrators. We had 20 proofreaders. We had over 6 editors. We had a graphic designer. All of these people agreed to work on this project pro bono, and that's something very important for the viewers to understand. Everyone dedicated their time, their energy for this project, you know, because they wanted to be part of this humanitarian cause, you know, this humanitarian plea for Palestinians to have a life of dignity, of freedom, you know, of love, you know. And what's incredible is, other than the 48 individuals who contributed their stories who are of Palestinian origins, everyone else was not Palestinian. Most of them, we had over 16 or 17 nationalities. We had Americans, we had British, we had Indians, we had Pakistani, we had Irish, we had Russian, we had Syrian, we had Kuwaiti, we had Saudi, you know, we had Bahraini. All of these people wanted to commit, and not only wanted, but they did commit their time, their energy, their effort, their skill set, their competence for this project because they wanted to be part of it.
That's really amazing. And I also wanted to highlight that you told me proceeds from the book sales will be donated to a charity.
And it's not proceeds, actually. What we decided to do is, even printing the book, we had 2 donors who decided they want to remain anonymous, but they wanted to cover the cost of the printing. So now we decided to sell the book for $48. And the $48 will go directly into a restricted fund to support orphans and amputees in Gaza through PCRF. So we do not sell the books. I don't sell the books. we got the first edition books, and we donated the 5,000 copies to PCRF. So they're now under the ownership of PCRF, which is the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, and they sell the book. And the only thing we told them is that we want you to sell the book for $48 to honor every single the 48 families who shared their stories and give them an opportunity to have an impact on the current Palestinians who are suffering because of everything that is happening, the occupation and so on. So they're sold through the website 48stories.com. As soon as you buy it, your money goes straight into a fund to PCRF that supports amputees and orphans.
Okay, great. And Nimati, I wanted to ask you, so you are a contributing author to this book. So why did you decide to volunteer on this project?
Thank you, Alia, and thank you, Deema, for I feel now emotional, honestly, although I was part of the book, it's, Alia, as Deema said, I speak for many people when I say we were overcome by feelings of anger, frustration, but also there was a feeling of responsibility. Like Deema said, those stories are our reality. And these are the stories that we grew up with. These are the stories that make us. These are our legacies, our family's legacies. So when Deema launched the idea of the book, and as someone I am the first generation to live outside of Palestine. And so I have a very strong connection and a very good grasp of the reality of Palestine before and after the occupation. So I felt the need, and I felt that I wanted to honor this reality and this understanding by sharing the story. So in part, it was driven by responsibility that I need to tell the story. I need to tell what I know, but also it's honoring the legacy that recent events have shown us. We are the children and the grandchildren of the Nakba and the Naksa survivors, and we heard those stories secondhand. But now we're witnessing them, the exact same stories happen in front of our eyes, and they're exactly the same. So this brought up a lot of emotions, this made the stories that we heard a reality. So we had the motive, but now we had the opportunity to do something. And because we're reliving certain events that we heard of, and we weren't born there, and we had nothing to do, and we couldn't actually contribute or make a difference then because we were not born. But to be presented with a chance to do something, even if it's telling the story, it was driven by this sense of responsibility and the need to share. So I shared my grandmother's story for the world to hear and for the world to see that we exist. And there's also another point, and I think the book really delivers on this very successfully. When we say occupation, and again, this goes to the non-Arabic speaking community and to the world, really. When we say occupation, you immediately think of mass destruction. You think of mass killing, mass exile. And this image is the result of the dehumanization strategy. This is how it works. It dehumanizes the group, so the individuals becomes less visible in this group. So the opportunity to tell the stories of individuals is very important to honor these individuals who are our parents and our grandparents, but it's also part of our resistance when we refuse to cast a blanket of generalization on our people. So having the names of the people, the names of the cities, the emotions written and narrated through stories, I think this, in addition to honoring the legacy and which stemming from a sense of responsibility to our own blood, but it's also part of refusing to be seen as only occupied people. We are people. So yeah, this was, I would say, the main points.
Mm-hmm. And from what you were telling me right now, as an experienced communication strategist, how important is storytelling and language in shaping public perception, in general, and raising awareness about social issues?
Mm. So in communication, language is very important, obviously. And, the choice of words is very important. The choice of tactics and like what we say and what we don't say is very important. But also it's the information we share. And this is something I, I, I'm very passionate about. There are different phases to a story. Like whenever you're reading a story, reading a book, or when you're watching, let's say, a movie, like, because they're all stories, and they're all, if we're talking about a campaign, if we're talking about communication, you need to start with awareness. You make people aware about the topic that they were indifferent about, maybe, or something that they never heard of before. And this was achieved in the story of Palestine, I would say, through the recent events. Like what happened since October has served as a wake-up call for the world to pay attention to what's happening. So this raised awareness. But then you need to share more details, and you need to educate, and you need to shed light on more specific angles of the story, so that it's not only awareness. It moves to engagement. It moves to association. It moves to emotional, but also rational understanding of the reality of this. And I would say Palestine is so rich and it's so diverse as a story, as a country, and has a wealth of culture, history, and future. It has people. So when I think of the Palestinian narrative, and obviously this applies to every story in general, like if we're talking about different like communities or different causes, we must consider the different pillars that make this story. And I think this is where Deema's book and the idea serves so brilliantly as a strategic tactic, because in the middle of this heartbreak, she wanted to also shed light on life, on memory, on legacy, and on the Palestinian spirit that comes through so strongly in the stories. So after people are aware, you need to give them something to engage, to understand, and to be educated. And I think this is why like in communication we should consider the different phases to keep the relatability, to keep the story relevant, and answer to different audiences in different ways.
Thank you very much, Nimati. And I wanted to ask you both, the festival theme this year is about language and erasure. And, again, mentioning what you told me before, this book is about, preserving the stories and the heritage of the Palestinian people. I wanted to ask you, what are some of the challenges that you have faced, when addressing narratives that have been marginalized or even erased, in general in your work?
So I think I can answer on that. So one of the biggest things is, unfortunately, a lot of people really wanted to be part of this project, and a lot of people actually did participate in the project, but also a lot of people had to pull out of the project. And they had to pull out of the project for safety reasons, because they were too scared to face any repercussions in sharing their family stories with their family names, and they were scared for their safety. Some of them are still living in occupied Palestine, some of them are living abroad, and they felt like, oh my God, if I share this information about my family, I might be, kicked out of work, I might be, removed from a country, deported, I might be, my citizenship might be taken away. So we faced that. Although for me, it was very clear. I was writing a book, I was writing personal narratives, human stories, literally. That's all it is. Like for me now, I literally feel like I have 48 new grandparents and 48 new fathers and mothers and cousins. And, it's like my Palestinian family expanded tenfold, because literally, and one of the things that we observed, at least I observed in storytelling, a lot of the contributing authors, when we first asked them to send us the exile stories, a lot of them focused on the exile itself. Like, oh, my father lived in Nablus, and then he had to go to Al-Quds, and then he moved to Bir al-Saba, and then he ended up in, I don't know, Egypt, okay? But then obviously we had to work a lot with the authors, and I'm like, okay, but tell me before. Tell me before, what did your grandfather do? What did he play? What was his hobby? Like, what was his profession? Who did he live with? How did he spend his time in Palestine? Because again, as Nimati said, you know, a lot of the times people, when it comes to any group of oppressed people, we automatically speak about them in numbers. You know, we say 33,000 Palestinians have been martyred. You know, 77,000 have been injured. You know, and it's always numbers. But behind every number, and I've said that a million times, there's a story. You know, and at a human level, if you have a heart, you know, and you just read these stories, you're going to connect with that human and you're going to understand. And the biggest challenge was respecting those who felt unsafe in sharing their parents' story, although there's so much pride, but also, you know, trying to make sure that we actually represent Palestine as it should be, because Palestine, as Nimati said, is a very diverse country. So when we selected the stories, we had to make sure that we had to have stories of different religions, you know, Christians, Jews. We have some stories that include Jewish Palestinians who existed, you know, Muslims. We have to cover the cities that are in Palestine. So we have over 13 cities that we've included. We also needed to include different professions, because often also we dramatize, I think that's the word, and, you know, oh, this Palestinian who left and they have the biggest business now in Jordan or in the Gulf, and it's always a successful story. But no, we have stories in there where a father was he was a businessman in Palestine, but ended up being a car mechanic, and he died as a car mechanic. Not to take away from that, but you see the hardship, you know, you see the struggle that a lot of Palestinians in the diaspora lived, you know, lived through. So these challenges, you know, capturing this diversity was a bit challenging, ensuring that, again, everyone's safety is intact, and ensuring that the verification of the facts, you know, that was very, very difficult and challenging, because again, 48 stories, just the number of details that were in. So trying to verify all these numbers, the facts that happened, you know, I'm not a historian, you know, I'm not a historian, you know, and there's a disclaimer at the beginning, like, listen, I tried my best, you know, me and the editors, and as much as I can, but I'm not a historian. These are people's stories, and they've been told by the great-grandparents, the grandparents, to their grandchildren. So I think these are the three main challenges that we faced.
That's amazing. And just again, you know, going back to what you said about fostering empathy, you know, and reclaiming the Palestinian narrative as well, you know, how do you think, because the aim of this festival is really to mobilize change through these discussions. So I wanted to ask you, how do you think literature can spark social change, you know, especially when it comes to, you know, dealing with deep-rooted conflicts and stories of exiles?
I always say, you know, again, and, you know, yes, this book is about Palestinians, but even if you want to read about, you know, refugees, if you want, I always say, check who the author is. You know, I don't want someone to speak on behalf of a refugee in the US, for example, you know, or in Germany, you know, who is white and privileged and whatever the case is, you know. I always say, if you are going to read, if you are reading for a purpose, and if you're reading to understand, if you're reading to connect, if you're reading so that this book can touch your heart or can transform your beliefs and values or whatever it is, you know, try to really think and be more mindful of who you are, reading for, you know. So in this book, because the authors are Palestinians, you know, for me, the illustrators, the editors, I didn't care, honestly, what their ethnicity is. It brought me so much joy that they weren't Palestinian. But for the 48 Stories of Exile, I wanted them to be Palestinian, because when you hear the story from those people, that's the truth, you know, like there's no, like, that it is what it is. They are retelling what they heard and what they learned and what they lived. And in all the stories, you know, you will see how, despite Palestinian being brought up in the diaspora, and most of the people like Nimati, I think, is like one of the few who's like the first generation living out of Palestine, but many of the authors are the third generation, you know. We have a lot writing about their great-grandparents, you know, so they heard the stories from their great-grandparents, then their grandparents, then their parents, you know, but all of them were successful in ensuring that no one in the family forgets where they come from, where the family comes from, the details of the fields, the homes, the streets, you know. And that is the power of storytelling. And I think, again, if you want to be a responsible reader, you need to do a bit of research before you read a story. especially if it's related to like historical nonfiction or fiction.
Thank
Can
you
I add to this? Just
Yes, of course.
okay, just wanted to say and I think it's something that you, Alia, discussed with Deema a few moments ago. Like when we're talking about like those stories and the power of literature in bringing this reality to life is that it's you talked about like if this is emotional and how what an emotional toll this could take. I think there is, yes, the emotional part, but also, as Deema said, this is the reality. So as a contributing author, it was emotional because I was remembering my grandmother, but this is like normal, but it wasn't emotional beyond that because this is reality and this is what I lived with, this is what I grew up with, this is the reality of my household, this is what made us and what shaped us. And I think, again, going back to linking this to the point that I made earlier about humanizing, it's usually when you meet a Palestinian who's not in Palestine, there's always a reason why they're not in Palestine, and this reason is rarely voluntary. This reason is rarely because they wanted to just like leave. So there's always a backstory, and this is what literature allows the world to see. This is what we can showcase, because the end result is, as Deema said, yes, some people made it outside of Palestine and managed to build a successful life. It's all successful because they've survived in varying degrees to, when compared to the standards that they had originally for themselves. But this backstory, this reality of the journey, it's literature and storytelling can bring this reality to the world. And this is, I would say, again, going back to the responsibility part. Being a Palestinian outside of Palestine and surviving is a duty. It's important, it's imperative, because this is human nature. Like, you gotta survive. But what got you here and the story that got us here to where we are and the journey is equally important, because it has a lot of details, and it's what people might not see. Like, if you meet me, if you meet Deema, this is not what you would see originally, but there's always a backstory. And I would love to see more like the use of words, the use of literature, the use of storytelling to bring this reality to life more.
Thank you very much. And that actually leads me to the last question that I wanted to ask you both. So how do you think, individuals or communities can support the voices of, the Palestinian people who have, experienced exile or marginalization? How can they engage in meaningful, advocacy for justice?
For me, again, number one rule is always respect the country you're in. So I have to say this, work within what you can and what you're allowed to. But more importantly, ask questions, check up on your Palestinian friends and ask questions. There's a reason why I intentionally had the book cover, the title written as 48 Stories of Exile from Palestine, because I wanted people to think like, why 48? Like, what's the significance of 48? I could have just said stories from Palestine or exile story from Palestine, but I wanted the 48 because I think now there are no excuses. We have an influx of information, but what we need to do is start to ask a question, and ask these difficult questions like the why, and why is this person saying that? Who is this person? And not just relying on mass media. There are no excuses now for anyone not to be standing up for humanity, whether it's the Palestinian cause, whether it's a natural disaster that happens, there's no excuse. We are so interconnected. And now, especially, and that's something I learned from this project. I always thought the Palestinian cause was a regional, maybe possibly a religious, cause, but after doing this project and seeing how many non-Palestinians, and to this day, I get messages like, please, I want to be involved in any shape, way, or form, and how most of them are non-Palestinians, coming in, it really proved to me that now this qadiyya, what we call this cause, is a humanitarian global cause. And every country around the world, regardless of where you are, I have no doubt that there's a group there advocating for Palestine. You can find them easily online, reach out to them, see how they're active, see what sits with you. And the only thing I would say is use what you're good at and use it to serve the Palestinian cause or any humanitarian cause, because that will only make the world a better place. And I believe, freedom for Palestine is freedom for any oppressed group of people. So whatever you do for Palestine applies to any oppressed group of people.
Thank you very much. Nimati, did you want to add to that?
Thank you. I love everything Deema said, so I echo that. Just I would say let humanity be the compass, and really, like, there's no getting lost if this is the compass. If it's humanity that we are all, advocating for and serious about, then those values of curiosity, asking questions, wanting to know, and keeping an open mind, staying true to those values that are underpinned by humanity, I would say this is the way. And again, just want to add a highlight to something that Deema mentioned. Really respect the stories that are coming from the Palestinians themselves, because yes, using the authentic, the reality over what media might choose to feed or say, I think authenticity should be sought. And thank you, Deema, for this recap.
Well, thank you very much to both of you, to taking the time to talking to me and highlighting these very, very important issues. So I just want to say again, for those who are interested in, the book, 48 Stories of Exiles for Palestine, that they can go online to the website, 48stories.com, to get the book. So again, thank you very, very much for your time.
Alia, thank you so much.
Thank
it was
you
such
so
a
much,
pleasure
Alia.
speaking to you, and Nimati, come on. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Alia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.